Season 2, Episode 4. What is life, anyway? And welcome back to another edition of the s3e4 podcast. My name is Chris Stewart, and I'm sitting at the table, as usual. Right, this is the normal part. I'm sitting at the table in the office of one Dr. Emily Brunsden. Emily, how you doing?
Hello, I'm very good.
We are joined today by a very, very special guest, which doesn't happen terribly often. We've done, what, maybe two? Two of these in the entire history, and this is number 3.
Yeah.
This is pretty exciting. I'd like to introduce our very special guest, also from the University of York, Kelly Redeker. Kelly, welcome.
Thank you.
It's really good to have you on board. Today, this is episode number 4 in a series of 6 about life in the cosmos, life around other planets, presumably. And we're finally getting to that really interesting question, which is, but when you say life, like, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about humanoid type things running around? Are we talking about tiny little amoeba? Like, how do you even define this thing? What are we talking about? So, Emily, where are we going today with this question of what even is life?
Why? Yeah.
We figured we should probably talk to someone who knows, and that person probably ought to be a biologist.
Well, that's it, because I know very little about biology, in fact, shamefully little. So I definitely needed to rope in somebody who knows a lot more. And given that we've only got a sample of 1 in terms of life, we needed someone who was actually an expert in that sample of 1.
Hence, Kelly, again, welcome. Yeah. What's your thing? Why are you here? Why have we invited you along? What do you do? Who, in fact, are you?
I am confusing. My background is pretty varied, and so the reason I'm here is because I'm a chemist who ended up in a biology department.
Excellent.
And so my focus is on trace gases or volatiles and how they influence systems like the planet, or like the way plants signal each other across distance. And particularly when you're talking about soils and horrible things like anaerobic digesters, they have metabolisms that are really actually quite similar to some of the things we think might be happening on other planets.
Okay. So I'm kind of reading into that maybe you've sort of fallen into this discussion of life in the cosmos from somewhere completely different. Like, this wasn't your thing all along?
I'm an Earth system scientist, is what I would say broadly I come from. And that incorporated looking at how the land surface affected the atmosphere.
Right.
So how rice influences the ozone layer.
Yep.
But that exact process is what we're looking for on these planets that are so far away we can't actually look at the surface. We can only really get a sense of what's going on in the atmosphere.
Okay. So, Emily, this is presumably then why we've invited Kelly along today.
Yes.
It's because we ultimately needed to talk to someone. Like, in one of the very early episodes, we decided if we're going to be looking for life in the cosmos, we probably need stars.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And then we realized, we probably need, planets for the life to be on. But at some point, we needed to grapple with ideas around, but what would the life be doing on the planet? What does that kind of look like? So how do you know, Kelly? Where did that relationship come from?
Well, I think we connected actually through a student event originally. Uh-huh. So there was a tri-sci event a very long time ago where Tri-Sci. So I think it was the Physics Society, Chemistry Society, and Biology Society came together, and they said, "Look, we're all like scientists, and we want to know about life in the universe. Let's go find an astronomer, a biologist, and a chemist, and we'll get them to tell us."
Beginning of a joke, doesn't it?
Yeah. We all walked into the lecture theatre. Yes. And it was a brilliant event, actually, and we all sort of gave a little bit of like our perspectives from the different disciplines. And then following on from that, we all sort of thought, this is so cool. We need to turn this into an actual like proper module that we can teach, that students can come along and learn about. Very sadly, we lost our chemist along the way, but Kelly and I sort of continued that discussion, and we eventually gave birth to this module.
So that conversation actually turned into a course that you can do here. Yeah. That's cool.
So we've got an astrobiology module here at York, which is taken by loads of different students from physics, biology, natural sciences, maths, engineering. Like, we're pretty open to our students and we
Very nice.
talk about life in the universe.
Very nice.
As long as they can tolerate both perspectives of physics and biology to a degree.
Well, I kind of feel like if you're going to walk into the lecture theatre wanting to talk about life in the universe, you've got to be coming from a pretty broad spectrum, right? You can't just say, yes, but I only want to talk about the physics of that. It's too bad, pal. Like it's got wet stuff in it, right?
Yeah.
It's got chemistry and biology and all of that.
Yeah.
So speaking of, Emily, I mean, we've spent a hell of a lot of time over the last 120 plus episodes of this podcast talking about very astrophysical things, but today we're delving into the astrobiological and the plain biological. So set us up.
Yeah.
Where do we begin this investigation of what the hell actually are we talking about when we're talking about life?
Well, I mean, we can ask Kelly the very simple question. So what is life? How do we actually define that?
Ask him the easy one first.
Yeah.
Kelly, over to you.
That's what
In
I'm here
15
for.
words or less, what's life?
Well, I've got this is one of the things I did actually look up because it's such a fantastic quote. But there's over 100 definitions of life in the published literature. So people have said the same thing effectively over and over again. And this particular person cannibalized all of those and came up with the things that just kept repeating.
Okay.
And their definition, very scientific, is life is a metabolizing material informational system with the ability of self-reproduction with changes, which requires energy and a suitable environment.
There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I like it. It's short, it's pithy, it goes right to the point, but its point is a little bit hazy. So we're going to need to dig into this a bit.
They then shorten it down to, because some of those things are actually self-supporting.
Okay.
So you can shorten that to life is self-reproduction with variations.
Self-reproduction with variation. Okay, the self-reproduction I can see, right? That's, you get a mummy bacteria and a daddy bacteria together. I don't know anything about it, but just go with me on this. You know where I'm going. But what's why the variation? What does that mean?
Because one of the definitions of life or requirements of what we perceive life to be is the capacity to adapt or respond to its environment.
Okay.
So it can't just be the same thing, because then it's not actually engaging with its environment.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you think of something which fails that second test? Something which is the first thing, which is self-reproducing, but that is not changing or varying with its environment?
I'm going to have to actually think about that one.
Take that one on notice.
The students pushed me on this because it's also worth remembering that the definitions that we're using are heuristic. They're not intended to be perfect. They're intended to be thought-provoking. So the example that was brought up last time was that by this definition, a mule is not alive. A male mule is not alive because it
can't reproduce.
Right.
Okay.
So it's important to understand that really all of this boils down to, and this is my feeling about it, we'll know it when we see it.
It's always nice to have really hard boundaries around things.
That's like our definition of exoplanets, right? There's no formal definition. It's like, does it kind of look like it should be an exoplanet? Yeah, okay, let's call it an exoplanet, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm in danger of losing faith in this entire process. But anyway, here we are. I mean, I always get in trouble at home when I talk about the fact that I used to be a particle physicist, because my wife just says, oh, that's very convenient. You can't actually even see any of them anyway. So how do you know that they're real? It's like, oh, all right, fair enough. Okay, back out of that one. Emily.
Yes.
We have a working definition of life, right? We can move on with this one.
Yep.
But how do we now start to explore life elsewhere in the cosmos? We can study life here on Earth, and we're surrounded by it. Fortunately, loads of different kinds, loads of different varieties, weird things, normal things. How do we then put this in the context of life elsewhere?
Yeah. So the thing that always blows my mind as an astronomer is like, okay, we can understand the stars, we can understand the planets, but how do you get the life to start?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, I understand the physical space. I don't get the biology behind all this. So I'm hoping Kelly can, just explain to me how life starts. We thought we'd give you easy question.
Yeah. I'm glad that we're starting with the easy
Where
stuff.
did it all begin?
Well, before we get there, I've been thinking, and I think the best example of something that reproduces but doesn't actually change is a computer virus.
Okay, nice.
So it fulfills all the things that are in there, and that it is absolutely reproducing itself in various environments. But it's never going to change its strategy. It's always and only capable of taking advantage of particular weaknesses. Whereas on Earth, what we see is that life will take advantage of every weakness given enough time.
Gotcha. I mean, you do realize that we are now setting ourselves up to be now attacked by all sorts of computer viruses that are going to come in through the Syzygy website from IT geeks going, oh, you want to see a virus that can adapt to different conditions? Try this one. But look, yes, I think taking the point as principle, I think that's really good. Yeah. So coming back to that point from a second ago then, Kelly, how do we think about where life came from? We've got loads of examples of life around us now. But and you can sort of rewind evolution, the evolutionary clock, and get, well, we had simpler things, and things came out of the water and developed and down from the trees and all of that. But you go only back so far before you get to the point of, but where did that one come from? And do we have any concept at the moment of, in the beginning, there was this thing that happened and therefore life?
I don't believe that anyone would claim that there was a spark that initiated everything. Okay. What we seem to believe at the moment is that certain conditions were important. So the environment had to be sufficiently fertile. It had to have nutrients. It had to have resources. It had to have energy that the organism could utilize. It had to have a sufficiently protected space so that it didn't get blown apart by the harsher realities of the world around it at the time, but it needed to have sufficient access to the world around it so that it could get more resources when it needed it. So the things that fulfill all of those criteria and are representative of environments that even to this day on Earth we see life not beginning but taking advantage of include specifically hydrothermal vents, or basically sub-ocean volcanoes, and not the vents themselves because those are too hot. But nearby, the vents are much cooler, and they're protected. The cracks and fissures are protected spaces and environments. The other option is on the shoreline. A warm, salty pond is the kind of the phrasing of it, and so it is desiccating and drying out, and then refilling, and because of that, the materials in that pond are being forced into contact.
Right.
And that speeds the process up. So the more you can kind of force the materials into contact, and the closer contact they're in, the more rapid the processes that might lead to life occur.
Okay. So what you're describing here, if I can paraphrase my understanding of what you're saying, is that there needs to be an environment. There needs to be a good environment within which life could prosper, could do something, could exist, and do the things that life needs to do. But that doesn't obviously answer so what was that, as you put it before, what was that spark? Yeah. And you seem to be saying, well, we don't know about the spark, but we do know about the environment.
And we do know that when I say spark, we go back to the Urey experiment where he had this lovely Frankenstein setup with lightning strikes going through this vial that had a whole bunch of organics.
So I don't know about this one. Tell me about who are we talking about?
So Urey was a scientist in the 70s working with SETI. He basically got a flask and filled it with the gases that we thought at the time were representative of the Earth atmosphere, which is at the time that was a very reducing atmosphere. So ammonia, carbon monoxide, and hydrogen, I think, were the primaries. You're going to pull me on this maybe. And then basically he struck it with lightning multiple times.
Let's throw energy into that.
Yeah, and that then over a few hours, a lovely sludge developed. And it turns out that he saw more than maybe he thought he saw, but he identified that the beginning organic materials were starting to form from this very simple experiment.
You mean the kind of sort of the chemicals, the chemical species that we see in living things?
Not that complicated, but the things that form those
right
molecules is what we saw.
So the building blocks, the basic level Lego blocks.
No, people have gone back to the vials that he stored.
Yeah.
And the sensitivity of equipment is much better now than it was when he was running things. And they suggest that, in fact, he was creating amino acids at the level that he was working at, and that's particularly exciting. But to go back to the idea of, well, where did life begin? It's unlikely that a lightning strike basically Frankensteinianly started it all.
Yeah. Lightning strike, therefore,
Therefore life. But what happens is the solution of liquid and water that we're working with that's filled with all these chemicals, if it's put together in close contact for long enough, thermodynamically, when you've got excessive energy and these chemicals around, they will form basic organic materials, things that we use to build living organisms. And at the same time, they'll also make surfactants, and surfactants are effectively soap. They're hydrophobic on one end, so they don't like water on one end, and they're hydrophilic on the other, and they create protocells. So the second you've got a bunch of surfactants in your water, you'll create the beginnings of what looks like a cell.
You mean basically like a bag?
Yeah, it's just a bag
stuff
that contains close contact chemicals.
Right. And that's important because
the closer the chemicals are in contact, or the closer they are to each other, the more often they'll hit each other.
Right.
And the more often they're going to react.
So within this sludge,
yeah,
you get all the basic gases and stuff together, you pound it with lightning for a while, and you're getting some basic Lego building blocks of things that we see that life is made out of.
Yeah.
And you're seeing bubbles, bags that can contain them in high or reasonable concentrations for them to do interesting stuff.
Yes.
And so, there's still a step there to, there's not life yet, it's the bits, but it's tantalizing.
And that's unfortunately where we end.
Yeah.
Because we've got really fantastic nanoreactor simulations of what goes on. We've got the building blocks that we actually started with. And they're even more impressive. Within a couple of microseconds, you have 10 carbon-long compounds that are really moving in the direction of really fantastically exciting stuff. But nobody's put anything into a box and waited for a month and seen life, right? That hasn't happened yet. So we haven't done that. But all the evidence suggests that given a reasonable environment, that means a temperature that's sensible, not going to blow everything you create apart instantly. So obviously 100 degrees plus Celsius is not going to work. But likewise, if you go all the way down to the bottom of the temperature scale, things are going to be moving so slowly, they'll never actually react to create the things that we care about.
Right.
So there are these boundaries of what is plausible. And if we live within those plausible boundaries, like our warm salty pond or our sub-ocean volcano, then we've got a chance to actually do something exciting.
Yeah.
So my question is, as this is coming from both of your expertise, actually, I think, do you see
I love
there
the
being...
thought that I have expertise. That's awesome.
Oh, you.
Oh,
no,
okay.
both of Kelly's expertise.
Oh,
I
sure.
see.
Yeah,
Right.
my multiple personalities.
Yeah. Sorry.
So my question is, do you see there as being this kind of like boundary between the chemistry and the biology? Or is it more of a gradual sort of change that's much more complex? That's just maybe a personal view.
No, it's a fantastic question, and again, something that the students wrestled with. One of the definitions of life, again, is it's that self-reproduction is where you get into trouble, because viruses are quite... I'm going to back up just a second. One of the things that people talk about as a possibility is the thing called RNA world. So we didn't actually have DNA as it currently is represented in the living organisms around us today, but we had prototype DNA structures, RNA structures that were able to self-replicate and to do their work.
This is going right back in evolution.
This is the very early days before we might even have our first bacteria.
Right. So this is right on the life, not life boundary.
Yeah. And even at that time, there were things running around called viruses, and viruses actually cannot self-replicate. That's what makes them not alive.
I was going to ask you about that one because
students
you often
like
hear
this one as
like,
well.
But viruses aren't alive. So, well, in what way are they not alive? So
because they rely on you to replicate.
Okay.
They cannot on their own replicate themselves. They have to take over your machinery and force your machinery to make more of them.
Right, which is different to, I mean, I rely on other things. I eat food, plants, animals, that kind of thing. And without that, I wouldn't get far enough to be able to replicate. But that's different to what you're saying.
That's
like
right.
I need an energy source and building blocks and so on. But the actual replication part, as long as all of that's taken care of, I can do that. I mean, not quite myself, but within my species.
Yeah.
Whereas a virus can't.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't have any mechanism by which they can generate their own energy. They certainly cannot generate replicas of themselves. They can basically inject themselves into a cell and then make that cell do what they want.
So,
and that's a purely chemical process.
Yeah. Could bring that back to Emily's question, which is, the biology and the chemistry. You're talking about fundamentally biological issues, but it's fundamental chemistry at the bottom of that. Is you can't separate one from the other, presumably.
Yeah, and chemists and biologists both hate that.
There's not a lot of shared coffee. So.
Yeah. Whereas the physicists just say, it's all just, the science of the outer electron.
Slimy rocks.
Yeah. Exactly. So, okay, we have some very tantalizing stuff where we can say we can make life adjacent sludge with the right chemicals or the right gases and a big burst of energy. We know we can do that. And on the other side,
you don't need the big burst of energy.
You don't need the big burst of energy.
No, this is, as long as you don't, big bursts of energy are actually bad because you're blowing apart the chemicals that you've created that you think are useful.
So you need some energy. In other words, you need, it's got to be the right kind of temperature.
Yeah.
Can't be too cold. Can't be too hot.
Yeah.
You need
gentle injections.
Okay.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be the Frankensteinian lightning blast. If anything, that's probably not great.
As a constant thing, I would expect that would be problematic.
No one wants that in their reproductive environment. So we've got that precursor. We know the kind of environments in which life, certainly here on Earth, is really, really good and has found all the niches, really, any available niche that it could find on Earth. Pretty much found.
I certainly think so.
So, Emily, how do we then proceed from here? Because at some point we need to start linking this to other worlds.
Yeah, well, so my thinking is, okay, we've got life that started through this biochemistry. Let's just stick those words together and pretend we understand the whole complicated process. Yeah. But then life then seems to become more and more complex. And we understand that in the physics world in the sense of we understand entropy and the increasing complexity that structures arrange themselves in the universe. But from a biological perspective, is this kind of increase in complexity from the kind of single cells to the bacteria to the lizardy things to the human beings? You can tell my biology is great.
Lizardy things. That's a whole category. This from a person who says metals are anything other than hydrogen and helium. But lizardy things.
This is probably actually the source of the problem.
I mean, I've literally got the thing in my mind of the lizard crawling up on the beach out of the water to become. Yeah, anyway.
In Emily's mind, you've got bacteria, viruses, bacteria, lizardy things. That's the entirety of life.
Honestly, she and I are on the same wavelength because that's Carl Sagan's demonstration of evolution through time, and that stuck with me forever. I love that animation. It's fantastic.
I'm just a walking cliche of not understanding biology. I'm afraid.
Okay. But back to you.
Anyway, so from the lizardy things to us, but that's a evolution in complexity. So is that just granted that life does that, or are we kind of special? This is, as I say, we've got all the really easy questions.
Yeah.
So if you're asking whether or not we as humans are special, I'm a firm proponent of the idea that we're lovely, but we're not that special. If you're talking about Earth as a planet, well, we're special because we're an N of one, right? We're the only one that we know of at the moment. In terms of complexity in organisms, well, that is the hallmark of adaptation, but what this means, and the thing that I think people tend to forget is the first organism probably wasn't specialized in the way that we think of specialization. They probably weren't there to cope with high acid environments or incredibly extreme pressures. They probably were relatively basic. And the fact that they could self-replicate with variation meant that they could adapt themselves. They could change over genetic timeframes to survive and maximize the resource recovery from other environments. And the problem, and again, this gets very quickly into ecology, because what happens is the second you've got more than 3 individual organisms in the same space, they're now competing for resources. And there's a thing called the competitive exclusion principle, which says, it's not entirely correct, but we use it often. But it says if you've got 2 organisms that are looking to utilize the exact same resource at the same time, one of them will go extinct and the other one will survive. And the only way to not go extinct is to adapt and to require different resources or the same resources in a different time frame. And so complexity is baked into the system because there's constant competitive pressure to not be outcompeted for resources by the other organisms around you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So it's kind of like you get life, then you get complex life. Is that kind of the general gist?
I think that would be a reasonable conclusion.
It does kind of, I don't know, it feels to me like there's, and maybe this is probably just my lack of understanding, because why wouldn't it be anything other than that? It feels to me like there's a question still in there, which is, but why would competitive pressure be a thing, right? Why, in that scenario, you've got 3 things all competing for, or even 2 things competing for the same resources. Surely it could have just been that one of them wins.
It's really
like, why would it then lead to we're fighting for these? Why isn't it just, I'm better, I win?
It's not necessarily even a fight. And I think that's the problem. You're not really dealing with fighting. But if you've got 2 organisms, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, self-replication isn't perfect. We've got lots of machinery in our bodies that will take our DNA as it replicates and self-correct. But even then, it is more error-prone than we would like. It's one of the reasons why we get sick or ill in some of the ways that we get ill. And so no 2 organisms are going to be the same. So going back to our 3 bacteria, they're all ever so slightly different. And those differences might make one of them a little bit better at harvesting resources than the others. Now, the other 2 are going to die off because that one, despite the fact that it wasn't trying to beat the others, was just better at eating things.
Just doing its
thing.
And
at growing better, reproducing faster than the other 2 are. So it wins.
Sure.
I've got quotation marks with my fingers going here. And the other 2 lose. And by losing, we mean they are no longer in the gene pool. And the one that was successful now gets to generate more progeny. So that progeny has that capacity to effectively scavenge resources from the environment. But now, all of those progeny are also ever so slightly different. And the ones that are ever so much better at dealing with their environment are going to succeed, and the ones ever so slightly less able are going to not succeed. And that's evolution in a nutshell. It's not that you're actively trying to beat somebody to death.
Sure.
It's just you're better at it than they are.
Is there also a side of it which is, the progeny are slightly different. Some of them will be better at succeeding than others. It's not a competition. We love all our children the same.
Exactly.
But is there not also an element of it which is some of them, like, they'll be different in different ways, and some of them will be able to succeed in this way and some of them will be able to succeed in that way, and maybe one of them says, well, I'm going over here.
That's right.
I'm going to go over here and succeed in this corner, this little niche that I found myself in the corner of the pond, and these ones over here are going, well, we're going this way.
Yeah.
And that's how you sort of spread out
That's
in terms of that variation.
It's called intraspecific pressure or evolutionary pressure. You're basically forcing the organisms to expand their optimal niche is what you're doing. Is the species will start with a particular set of requirements that they perform particularly well in, but because they're all fighting for the same resources at the same time, that forces the children to specialize in other ways, like you say. Some go to more difficult terrain where the resources are free and not competed for. Some get better at scavenging resources. Some go to sleep until all the other ones are awake, or all the others are asleep themselves, and then they wake up and they scavenge while the other ones are not actively competing. So there's all these different ways, like you say, that you can manage to become sufficiently different that you're not competing directly with somebody else.
Yeah, but the danger you so easily fall into, and I'm like, my brain can't stop thinking this way, and your language went this way as well. You started with the like they're not actively fighting each other. Neither are they actively changing, going, well, I'm going to go over to this corner and use this. It's just that's what change does. Is maybe once in a while one of them will go, actually, I like eating this thing that none of you like eating. I'm going to go and munch on that for a while. And that just happens. Or maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
But that's how things change and spread out.
For bacteria, of course, what's happened is the proteins that were created by the genes that were developed or through the RNA transcription, those get modified because there's an amino acid that gets put in the wrong place. And that changes the shape of that protein. So that protein that was doing something to eat or utilize a compound is now actually targeting a different compound. It's eating or metabolizing or utilizing a different compound. And so again, this is a very chemical process for a bacteria. Yeah. It's not in any way a choice or a perception-based outcome. It is, well, look at that now.
Incredibly subtle stuff, which is, when you think about how all of this can come from a relatively simple grouping of very basic building blocks, but which in long chains can make incredibly complicated molecules, proteins, and so on. Just the sheer amount of variety that is possible is extraordinary.
So we've talked about, I think we basically agree that there's a inevitability to the increase in complexity of life once you have that start. I was going to ask the question, and I actually deleted it because I thought, no, I'm not going to ask this question.
Why not? We've asked all the other curly ones.
Well,
why not this one?
My next question, Len, I'm not going to ask is...
This is the question you're not going to ask.
This is the question I'm not asking, which is, what is intelligent life?
Oh, jeez.
Wow. Yeah.
That's a whole other series.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's arguable as to whether or not we've actually even seen any.
Well, that's part of my reservation in asking the question. So
maybe we park that one for the time being.
There's actually a great book that I read when I was in high school called The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. The back half of it was pants. But the front half is great because it's basically a description of all the things that we talk about as being special to humans, but have examples in the animal world. And what you find is, in fact, everything that we claim to be special for is represented in the animal world. And especially now, some ungodly number of years later, things like crows and corvids, ridiculously clever and capable in ways that we did not give them credit for when I was an undergraduate. And so that whole question about intelligence, I think, is, I think that's a hotly debated thing even now. We want to be special, either as the center of the universe or as the only conscious being. But I have a feeling that we're just not.
So again, I'm going to make an inference, and you can correct me then if I'm wrong. So we're thinking about this in an astrobiological context. Let's say on exoplanet Y, we've got life has started. It's become more and more complex because that's inevitable, given the way we understand how life works. Is becoming intelligent, therefore inevitable? And you can have this as an opinion rather than a scientific argument, if you wish.
What I would say is that we had to go through a number of steps of complexity beyond just adapting to novel environments to get to where we are. So the first big step that made us into, the difference between prokaryotes and eukaryotes is the fact that eukaryotes have a nucleus. Well, the current understanding is that what has happened is long, long ago in the past, there were two bacteria. One bacteria ate the other one, but didn't ingest it because the other one was doing a really good job at creating energy. And over time, the one that was creating energy lost all the resources that it needed to replicate itself because the outer bit of the bacteria was doing all that heavy lifting. But the outer bacteria relied very heavily on this inner bit to do all the heavy lifting energetically. And that's our mitochondria in the nucleus of the cell. And that's the nucleus, is that subsumed organism.
Okay. I'm loving this new idea that bacteria eats bacteria. Therefore, humans.
But they don't actually. But then don't actually eat them. That's the thing.
Just absorb.
Yeah,
in a clever kind of way.
And this has now happened. We think we've observed it happening 3 times.
When you say observed, you mean in the record of evolution?
As in there's organisms out there that indicate that they may have done this.
Right.
So the first thing is the mitochondria and the nucleus of the cell that gave us prokaryotes versus eukaryotes, and archaea. And then the second thing that happened was the ingestion of what became the chloroplast. So that's how we got kind of the capacity to actually photosynthesize and create life.
So that was a similar kind of thing of, if I absorb you, look at what we can do.
Yes.
This is awesome.
Yeah. But again, not in any way conscious.
Sure.
No.
Sure. We're anthropomorphizing these extraordinarily, but yes. Yeah.
And then in the last year, they've just proposed a new identification of a thing that fixes nitrogen in the ocean. And that's a nitroplast is what they're calling it. And that's the third version of this. But for us to get to where we have gotten, we had to have gone through where we went through those steps, and that's partially what allowed us to then dominate other systems. It gave us the resources to dominate more challenging environments.
Okay.
And this is all ignoring the fact that on Earth, at least, the biology transformed the planet in a number of ways. So the reason that we breathe oxygen is because long, long ago, the bacteria decided to start photosynthesizing because they had a chloroplast. And that photosynthetic driver created the oxygen that basically stripped all the excess carbon dioxide, because we started with lots more carbon dioxide than we have today. It stripped that out of the atmosphere and replaced it with a lot of oxygen. Oxygen chemically is a really horrible compound. It's incredibly reactive, very destructive, and it killed, we think, lots of organisms in the ocean and oxidized the surface of the planet. And therefore, everything above the water's surface now had to be tolerant of oxygen. So we became, or the pressure was there to become aerobic life.
Right.
So we breathe oxygen because of bacteria.
Yeah.
Many billions of years ago.
I find this so transformative because from my perspective, I've been thinking about life in the universe as being like, okay, here's a slimy rock world that might be good for life. We'll put some life on it and it will be fine. But really, what we're talking about is that slimy rock world and life come as a package deal, and the life changes the planet as much as the planet influences the life.
And so I guess it's completely plausible that you could have an environment in which you get the requirement, all the building blocks, everything you need, you get basic life, but then for whatever reasons, you don't get the next level, which is, if you like, the sort of space for it to then adapt into.
Yes.
You know, that what you're describing here on Earth in its very early stages was quite a large variety of different environments, and therefore, in a strange way, lots of different ways that the life could go, ultimately leading to complex things like us that, you know, do podcasts. That might not happen. It's not inevitable that if you're on a slimy rock world, maybe it just stays slimy rock life.
Yes.
And then eventually either just stays that way forever or dies out or just evolves as different kinds of slimy rock life, but never makes a podcast. Like, that's possible.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's interesting.
Again, being the cynic, I think it's actually more probable.
Right.
Wow.
And I think it's because, I mean, let's take again as a thought experiment. If we assume that Titan has an ocean that is not methane.
Okay.
So it's underneath all the ice. There's some liquid water somewhere buried deep in there. And it is just warm enough next to the hydrothermal vents that are there probably from some kind of tidal forcing that it is able to get started. But the limitations on that environment are so tight and so constrained because you can't really go very far in any direction before you freeze or the resources are no longer available. And so and this is true on Earth as well. If life began once, it probably began multiple times. But in some locations, the resources ran out. In some locations, the environment changed sufficiently that they basically killed everything that was there. The number of options of non-success are not limitless, but many, many more than the options for successful creation and sustaining of life. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's that, again, coming as an ecologist, it's that environmental boundary of what is available is going to be the determinant of whether or not we see little green men. If they have the lovely environment that allows them the time and the space and the potential to adapt over a range of different conditions, then yeah, we might see intelligent octopi or not.
It does kind of feel much more likely that whatever we do find, if we ever find anything, is going to be incredibly basic, probably, most likely. But that fundamental question of yours, Emily, is, but is that just because we found them too early? And if we'd come, several billion years later, would we have a conversation? What you seem to be saying is, chances not, right?
Chances are they're not there anymore at all.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like the statistics of a restaurant starting up on the high street. Right? It's like, how many are going to be there in a year's time?
Wait a minute. That's a miserable chance, isn't it?
Are you saying we're basically the McDonald's of the universe?
No. McDonald's is completely different. McDonald's is like panspermia, right? That's,
right. Oh, please, no. Let's not spread our
McDonald's
life throughout the cosmos. Yeah. That's the Elon Musk version. Is we're going to take this rubbish everywhere. Don't sue us, Elon. So yeah.
Okay, but yeah, okay. So this is then, I think, coming really nicely to where we want to get to, was in the sense that, okay, we don't understand what life is. We understand it might evolve. Sometimes it might become intelligent if we're very lucky. But how are we actually going to then find it? I love this idea. I'm still really into this, of the connection between the life and the planet. So if we can only get limited information about the planet, what might we go look for to say, yeah, that one's got life?
Well, this is where simple life is actually the best.
Okay.
Because all the metabolisms that microbes use, and these are, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said life on Earth has been very good at accessing resource and utilizing resource in the ways that it can be utilized. And so unless there's a planet out there that's incredibly enriched in heavy metals, they're unlikely to be an energy resource, because why would you choose to utilize something that wasn't around very much? You want an energy resource that actually is common and available. And those resources on Earth are carbon dioxide, hydrogen gas, hydrogen sulfide, sulfate, carbon monoxide, and ammonia. Right? Those are the basic building blocks that you might expect coming out of a volcano.
Sure.
And once you've got that, and once you've got your basic organism, then there's a thing called the redox ladder, which is the type of energy or the metabolism and the resources that it uses. And it kind of goes in stepwise, where if you are an oxygen breather, you get the best meal. Oxygen gives you the best bang for the buck. It really powers the engine. It's like driving with a V8. And then you go down the ladder through a couple of steps, and then you get to nitrate, and then you get to sulfate, and then you get all the way down to the bottom, which is methane. And that's just like trying to get somewhere with a lawnmower engine, right? I mean,
you can get there, but you're not in a hurry.
Yeah. It's and that's exactly it. Methanogens reproduce very slowly. They've got just enough excess energy to make that happen, but it doesn't happen rapidly.
But to be clear, that exists.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. So organisms that eat carbon dioxide and hydrogen and make methane out of it, or that take acetic acid, vinegar, and they basically break the methane off of the acetic acid, and you're left with a carbon dioxide effectively. So they're basically splitting it in two. You've got acetogenic or hydrogenotrophic methanogens, and those exist today around the planet, particularly where there's not a lot of oxygen.
Right.
These are anaerobic organisms, and they're everywhere. And those organisms, the methanogens, the ones that produce methane, are one of the reasons why we have methane in the atmosphere. So we have, or as much methane in the atmosphere.
Sure.
So the thing I started working on, which is rice, rice actually does a really good job. It acts as a very effective soda straw connecting the atmosphere to the deep soil. Because rice has a thing called parenchyma, and in the roots of the rice, because it's underwater, the roots still need oxygen. So what the parenchyma do is they're basically open pores that allow oxygen from the atmosphere to travel through the leaves, down the stem, and into the roots. And that's great. But the unintended consequence, and I don't think the plant ever intended this to happen, but the unintended consequence is all those bacteria down in the anaerobic soil that's been saturated with water and no oxygen's been available for weeks, they've been producing methane. And so there's a whole whacking amount of methane in the soil, and it quite happily travels up the roots, up to the leaves, and out into the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, they bypass all the bacteria, because again, bacteria are sneaky. The bacteria that live near the top of the soil, where the oxygen starts to penetrate in, are all just lying in wait for that methane resource to come up to them. So if you have to travel through the water column or through the soil to the atmosphere, you get eaten if you're methane. So you need this soda straw that goes, and that's why agriculture is a huge driver of methane concentrations in the atmosphere, because half the planet eats rice as their primary meal, and much of that rice is irrigated.
Mm-hmm. So unintentional, but still what it is. It's what it is. So returning then to your question, which is around, so it's effectively trying to link all of this back to what are we looking for? It sounds to me like we have lots of different examples, huge numbers of examples on this planet of the sorts of things that we might be able to look for on other planets. But I'm guessing it's not as simple as, well, let's just go and look for stuff we see on Earth.
Yeah, can we just go and look for methane now and say there's plants that are... People are making rice fields. And
Methane, therefore rice, surely.
So the good news is the number of chemical compounds that are metabolically driven by simple organisms is not massive.
Okay.
And so that the reason that we were talking about dimethyl sulfide in class that day is because the transformation of sulfate, if you reduce sulfate biochemically, that gives you energy. And what you're basically doing is stripping off the oxygen and slapping on a couple of methyl groups. And you end up with a thing called dimethyl sulfide, which is actually generated, it's generated in a more complicated way in ocean surfaces. But this is something that, again, goes into our atmosphere and actually has a significant atmospheric impact in that it creates clouds.
Right.
It creates cloud condensation nuclei, and that is the nucleus of clouds. And so there's a number of these very simple things. You've got nitrous oxide, N2O. You've got dimethyl sulfide. You've got methane. You've got methanol sometimes. You've got acetic acid. Maybe you've got carbon dioxide. Yeah. And that's pretty much what you've got to work with as microbial volatiles, things that are actually going to get into the atmosphere and stick around for any length of time.
As a result of microbial action is what you're saying.
And these are just basic, this is just the microbes doing their thing and living.
Right.
And they are generating these compounds. I missed on methyl chloride. That's another one. But it's just the basic metabolism makes these things. And we're just like them. We are creating carbon dioxide and water every time we do anything.
Just a big, complicated version of the same thing. And so is this what we might term biosignatures, the sorts of things that we're looking maybe for on other planets? Biosignatures. We're looking for biosignatures. Can we see any of these things that say, we've seen that, therefore must be life.
Yeah,
surely.
Yeah. This was going to be my question. What's your favorite biosignature? What are you going to tell?
From that list.
Yeah.
From that list, if you were given, if you were given big grant and bunch of telescope time or equivalent, right? We can go and look for stuff. What would you look for on another planet that would say, this is your best bang for buck looking for life?
So I can never answer anything easily. And so there's two things that really get in the way. Mm-hmm. The first one is concentration. So again, it's all well and good to have our hypothetical vent-based, volcano-based organisms down at the base of the pond on Titan. But if that ice cap is so thick that signal can never get out to the atmosphere, then
too bad.
It's like that tree falling in the forest. We'll never know. We'll never care.
If there's life under the ice caps, but you never get to it, is it there?
Is it there? Yeah, exactly. So there's concentration issues. There's also contamination issues. And by contamination, I mean other compounds that are going to absorb the light that we want to see from these things. And of course, that's what Emily does outstandingly well. And that's the problem. When you look at the light that comes to Earth from the sun, there are big, huge swaths of energy that are stripped out of the atmosphere before it ever gets to us by the chemistry of the gases above us. And one of my favorite biological things is that there's a thing called the atmospheric window, which just so happens to sit in the visible range. And there's a very good chance that we see in the visible range because that's where we actually have long-distance vision capabilities. If we were trying to look in the infrared, there'd be a fog after a certain distance because of the things that would absorb infrared light trying to go that far.
It's not so much a coincidence that we can see in what we call the visible range of frequencies so much as all you would.
Yeah.
If you were going to evolve an eye that was good at seeing long distances on this planet, that's the one.
Right.
I mean, we've got the luxury of loads of photons from the sun and the visible,
that's right?
That's where the huge output from the sun is coming from.
Yeah. So the combination of lots of good stuff coming from the sun in those wavelengths and the way it interacts with the atmosphere means if you're going to have an eye that sees in these frequencies, you're going to do well.
Yeah.
You'll see the tiger that's trying to eat you.
Exactly. From a long way away, which is what you want. You don't want to see it when it's in your face.
And this is what leads us to what makes for a good biosignature, because you have to be able to separate the signal from that gas from everything else. And every compound has a select few wavelengths that it really works within. And if you aren't looking at that wavelength, you're not going to see the compound. And if there's another compound that has exactly the same wavelength, it will mask what you're trying to see. You can get at that, but it's a lot harder.
Mm. So I did like the way you said before, you never actually answer a question directly. What you seem to be saying is, look, it's complicated. It's not a matter of just saying, well, we think carbon dioxide, or what was the one you were saying before?
Well, methane is a really great example,
Yeah, that it's not just a matter of naming one and saying, let's go and look for that, because it's in the context of, but we're looking at everything at once and trying to see whether or not you can even see that thing before you even begin to ask, is that a good biosignature, let alone, is it specifically a biosignature on that planet?
Yeah.
You've got to remember that you're always looking through an entire atmosphere. Yeah. You're not looking for discrete anything. You're going through and actually taking a pass through an entire atmosphere when you're observing a planet from a far away distance.
And I'm being slightly disingenuous with the question, to be fair, because I kind of know part of the answer. And that the fact that if you were to choose any one of the molecules that you named before, basically, as far as I understand, we can dream up a way for a planet to produce this gas totally abiotically, totally without life, just through chemistry.
Yep.
Yeah. Turns out chemistry is not just about life, that it can just happen.
Yeah. I mean, we saw this in Penguins on Venus.
Yes.
We saw this.
She knows this is one of my pet peeves. I was just like, oh, please. Yeah.
Don't talk about penguins on Venus.
Yeah.
Or don't talk about dimethyl sulfide and the flying fish that are on Kepler 2b.
Is that what they
18b,
said?
sorry.
Okay, jeez.
So,
I mean, look, it could be. No one's saying that there aren't flying fish. All we're saying is, look, there are other, probably much more likely explanations for having seen that particular signature in the light that's coming from the star. So this is hard, is what you're saying? I think that's what you're saying.
I think so. And it's good to know that Kelly's backing me up on the fact that this is hard.
Yeah.
Look, if you just come in here and just said, look, what are you, why are you taking so long? Come on. All you have to do is X. You'd basically sound like a physicist, I think, is coming in and just telling everyone how to do it. Yeah.
Oh, I think that we all have our moments.
Well, why don't we take a little sideways step then after saying that it's hard? Because something that when I start at least talking to people about life and so on, is they start asking me really difficult questions about their favorite sci-fi film or book or whatever. And whether or not I've seen this particular sci-fi film or read the book or whatever is, first of all, the first hurdle, because I don't actually read a lot. But the next thing, but if people ask, what about these sort of other alternative biologies, like silicon-based or ammonia-based life? Couldn't we just
we're famously on this planet, we're carbon-based.
We're carbon-based,
right?
but couldn't these other organic molecules do stuff that's very cool and create life as well? So while we've got the biologist in the room, let's just ask them the nerdy questions.
Is that a starter? Could you even do that?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be pedantic just briefly. Organic means specifically carbon.
Oh, okay.
So you can't have a silicon-based organic compound because it's not actually organic.
I will
silicon-based
take myself corrected. Yes.
Let's go with that.
But beyond that, that's like I say, very pissy. The problem with silicon is there's a number of problems with silicon, but the main problem is that silicon is favored by people because it is on the next row down on the periodic table from carbon. And so it has the same potential to have 4 connective bonds as carbon does. And that's one of the things that we like about carbon. Carbon is also famously good at creating weird structures. So there are well over, I think it's 100,000 compounds that are known that are carbon derived. And as you might imagine, for organisms that need to gain any advantage they can from the metabolisms and the processes they go through, that variety is a particularly exciting thing.
I'd never really thought about that, but I mean, it's a really interesting approach to that. That yes, carbon can make 4 connections, can make 4 bonds. That's what it's kind of famous for.
Yeah,
but I never really thought about that in the context of, so that gives you lots of flexibility in terms of the chemistry, that you can do loads of things with carbon.
Yeah.
Which means you can do loads of things potentially with life, with carbon as the thing that you're based on.
As the basis. And this is why we don't have hydrogen life. Hydrogen has a single bond.
Right.
So it has very limited options.
It's quite disappointing because there's quite a lot of hydrogen around.
There is. That would be very nice.
Yeah. But it's not a metal,
It's one of only 2. Yes, as we know.
But the problem with silicon is bigger. Yeah. It's heavier. Its bonds are a little bit tighter. The more massive the elements in the bonds, the tighter the bonds are.
Okay, so in other words, harder to break.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't form nearly as many different compounds as carbon does. Its variety is greater than many compounds, but much reduced relative to carbon.
Okay. Because carbon can make lots of bonds, but relatively easy to break, and so it can make lots of different things, but also be broken and make different things, and the chemistry can happen to turn this thing into that thing. Yeah. But with silicon, that's just harder.
It's harder and it's more limited. So you can't. So carbon can make a 3-carbon ring which would be impossible with silicon.
Okay.
It's called steric hindrance, when you're too big to allow something to happen.
Right.
And that's what happens.
So you're
with
already
silicon.
just saying there's a whole bunch of stuff that carbon can do that silicon can't even do.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's already limited, even though they're quite similar in terms of the periodic table and their basic chemistry.
Yes.
It's just stuff that it can't do.
And if we go back to the idea that life on Earth utilizes resource effectively, or reasonably effectively, silicon is the most common element in rock, right? Mm-hmm. And so why on earth is silicon only used? I mean, only. Silicon's used in a lot of defensive mechanisms, but it's not really embedded within the metabolism of any organism on the planet. Right. It is what's called a kind of a, what's the word for it? A non-mandatory nutrient. Okay. So, I mean,
you can make armor out of it.
Well, actually, when you go into a grass field and you come out when your arms are all stripy with scratches, that's silicon that the plant has taken up and used to create defensive
so it's like
armor.
Little bits of glass just cutting you. Right?
Yeah.
Well,
Which phytoliths, as they're called. And it's absolutely that.
It's not compulsory, but it's handy to have around.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't need it to live, but if you want to not be eaten, it's a good thing.
But what you're saying is, given that it is so abundant on this planet, and this planet, life on this planet has done really well at using everything else in every way it possibly can that we can see, why would it be that life hasn't gone silicon? There's a lot of this stuff around. We should build that fundamentally into our life structure.
That's a good point.
Why wouldn't you do that? And the only thing I can imagine is it would be very hard to build a cellulose-like molecule.
Right.
Or a chitin-like molecule with silicon.
Yeah. Okay. So that's at least a fairly good argument, or circumstantial evidence against. Look, if we don't see it here, and we see so much here, if you don't see it here, probably best to just not worry about that.
Yeah. No, this is really helpful because I don't have to now read those books about silicon-based life.
Well, this comes from, and I'm deeply disappointed to have to say this because I grew up with Star Trek with Spock mentally communing with a silicon-based life form that nobody understood. And it was, that was formative in growing up. It was absolutely something I remember very fondly. But, that's difficult. The other problem with silicon is, how are you going to get your resources? Because diffusing through rock is particularly slow. So if you're talking about a silicon-based life form, they're going to be ancient before they even begin because they had to have all the resources travel through rock to get to them in order to actually do what they're going to do. Unless we're talking about some silicon organism that's sitting on the surface or the bottom of the pond, and it's getting resources for its body from the rock and resources to live from the pond. But, if you're talking about a silicon-based organism that is rock-based, that's really, really hard.
Yeah.
The universe isn't old enough, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's cool. And since I threw it out there, do you have any feelings about ammonia-based life?
Ammonia has the same challenge as rock-based silica in that when you cool, if you're going to have liquid ammonia as the solvent, and so again, the what people propose is not the organism is being built out of ammonia, but that it lives within a pond of ammonia. And so if you're doing that, then you're talking about temperatures that are roughly minus 50 degrees Celsius. And there's, if we assume reasonably good behavior, then generally speaking, chemical reactions are reduced by a factor of 2 for every 10 degrees that you drop. So if you go from 20 degrees, as we're kind of sort of in right now, to 10 degrees, the chemistry around us will slow by a half.
Right.
And if you then go to 0 degrees, it'll slow by another half. So from 20 to 0, you've gone to 1/4 of where you started with, and so on. Going down to minus 50 means you've dropped roughly 100 times your reaction rate.
So the reactions are still going, but you're really limiting yourself.
Yeah,
that's
you're
very slow.
Slowing things down really, and it's really critical then to remember that on Earth, where again, we think that things were pretty well situated for things to be well behaved and to be nice, it still took 1 billion years for life to happen.
Yes, we need to remember that we did well on this planet, but it did take a while.
Yeah.
And the universe is only so old.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, even the galaxy and the planets are only, right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think my understanding is basically as soon as life could, it did.
Yeah.
And even then, that's just under the optimal conditions. So
yeah, very well behaved.
Yeah. So I think what we're reading out of that one is not impossible, but very, very slow, and so very unlikely that we would have seen anything.
I'm very much a fan of being agnostic. I am not going to say yes or no because you can't disprove a negative.
Yeah.
Right? So it could happen, but I would lay my odds much more if we're talking about what biosignatures to look for, if we're talking about the things to actually pay attention to, why focus on the least likely outcome?
Yeah. And in terms of, resources being put into, and effort being put into, let's go and search for this. Like, you're not going to put the resources into, ammonia. That seems like a good idea.
Let's spend the money on the easy stuff.
Yeah. Let's wait another 10 billion years and see if ammonia planets are doing the job.
Oh, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
So, Kelly, I have 2 questions. I'm going to be really mean, and I'm going to ask you to give me basically
a simple answer,
a one-word answer.
This is really going to test you as someone who, at least so far on this podcast, for very understandable reasons, you have avoided giving direct answers to some of our very unfair questions. Emily's going in hard.
I am now.
Yeah.
Okay. In fact, I want you to answer each of these questions yes or no.
Ooh.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it's okay because there's no wrong answers. Because both of these questions start with "Do you
always
think?"
Wrong. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Okay, so the first question is: do you think we are going to discover life outside of our solar system in the next 5 years?
Ooh,
let's go.
No, I think that we're going to find life, absolutely, but I would bet more. I mean, honestly, the more things are discovered on Mars, the more you want to bet that something happened there. Whether or not it's still alive is a question, but it just seems
then this is cool. So it's no to outside our solar system, but yes to inside our solar system? Is that?
You're right on the boundaries of yes for that. But,
okay.
But you're as aware as I am that they found some very interesting minerals on Mars that on Earth are formed by microbial life. And as of yet, it's only been about 6 months. As of yet, there hasn't been anyone who's piped up and said, well, chemically, you could do it this way.
Yeah, everyone's kind of waiting. It's like, surely that's never... You always ruin it for us.
Exactly.
And there's just crickets so far. It's, like,
it's the penguins on Venus thing.
Damn it.
Really?
Okay, no, that's cool. Because you actually...
so, hang on, just wrapping up. That was a no, but yes.
It was a yes within the solar system and no
system.
outside the solar system. I just think the challenges outside are too much, and the atmospheric complexity and possibilities are too complicated for what we can do with the spectra right now.
Okay, that's a big call. That's a very long one-word answer. Yes. Next.
Well, but actually, to be fair, Kelly answered my second question inadvertently.
Oh, well, there you go.
Which was, do you think there's other life in the universe apart from here on Earth?
Okay, so that does seem to be a yes, but I'll allow you to answer for yourself.
Yes, but it may not still be alive.
Okay.
And that's beyond the solar system, just to be clear.
Oh.
As well.
Yeah. I'm the more I read, the more I think that, like you say, life seems to be inevitable if you've got the resources, the time, and a gentle location.
Emily, Kelly, we've had a hell of a discussion. I think we've gone a very long way in this episode, and fair enough, because it's taken us a number of episodes in, and to be clear, a series of syzygy about life. It's taken us this long to actually get to the question of what even is this thing, and if we haven't completely nailed it down to it's this, and this is where it came from, and this is how it comes up, and this is exactly what we've got to look for.
And its name was Susan.
We at least have a hell of a lot of really good parameters to talk about. I mean, I kind of feel like I have a better idea now of what it is that characterizes life as we know it, but also, and it always comes down to this in this podcast, Emily, the challenges that we've got ahead of us to find something in our own backyard, Mars, let alone across the other side of the galaxy.
Do you think we should rebrand the podcast and just be Syzygy because science is hard?
that can be our subtitle. It just Syzygy. Probably not.
I like science is hard, but cross out hard and write down fun. That's actually.
Science is fun but hard but fun and hard. Yeah. If you like difficult things, come and listen. Okay, we could go on about this forever. But where I seem to have got to in this one personally is it feels like we may be, as a species, on the cusp of some really, really exciting discoveries, but really close to home. The discoveries elsewhere are going to be really, really hard. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't look for them, but we've got a big job ahead of us. Emily, what are you taking away from this?
I'm still loving the kind of concept that we need to think about life and its environment as a one unit thing. I think as a physical scientist, there's been a lot of just like, forget about that horrible stuff that has DNA or whatever it is, right?
The wet stuff. We don't deal with the wet stuff.
The lizard things, whatever. Yeah. But no, it's a system, and you can't ever get away from that and thinking about the whole environment as part of the life itself. Yeah.
And Kelly, having joined us on this crazy thing we call Syzygy, any final thoughts from you? Anything that you're walking away with going, here's what I reckon?
I've enjoyed talking about and refining the way we think about things. I love the messiness of it. What I love in science more than anything else is a big, complex, messy system that we don't know enough about. And this is perfect.
I think maybe
we're chaotic enough that we meet.
That's our other subtitle is Syzygy, a big, complex, messy system. I think that could be going forward. Well, listen, listeners, if you've enjoyed this conversation and you feel like you're a big, complex, messy system and you want to, write in and talk to us about it, maybe get some therapy. There are ways that you can do that. Emily, how can people contact us on the show?
Well, we have this wonderful thing called the website.
We do, yeah.
It doesn't currently have any viruses self-replicating through it. So
that we know of.
That's really nice. Yeah. It is syzygy.fm, syzygy.fm.
Yes, indeed.
And you can find all our other episodes in this wonderful season, as well as
the previous 120 or so of season 1.
I was actually going to go with the contact page, but sure. Yeah, let's go with that too.
Yep. On the contact page, you can drop us a note. You can tell us what you think about life in the universe. Are we going to find it? Are we not going to find it? Are we going to find it next door? Are we going to find it on the other side of the galaxy? Let us know, as well as any other questions, any other concerns, any other queries that you've got for us here on Syzygy. We have in the past done various things with social media. Kelly, are you a social media person?
I have reduced my output, but I am on Blue Sky under Volatiles Red.
Oh, very nice. I like it. Volatiles Red on Blue Sky. We're not currently doing a lot of the socials. We may pick that up again in the future. But if you want to find us, then the website's the best place to do that. The other place you can find us is on Patreon. We do have a few people who support us, help the electrons run through the website, help us to do the things that we do. And for all of you who do support us, your support is gratefully, gratefully received. If you want to be amongst them, go to patreon.com/syzygypod, and you can become a paid-up member of the show by just flinging a couple of pounds, a couple of dollars our way every month, and it helps us to do what we do. But the best thing you can do to support the show is to tell everyone you know that there is this fabulous show called Syzygy, and we talk about everything from the most basic principles of life, whether you bung a lightning bolt through it or not, right through to have we even found intelligent life on Earth as it currently stands right now.
And I'm going to claim that no other podcast is talking about how life startup is like a high street restaurant.
I think that's probably right. Yes. I think we've completely cornered that particular market. Listen, Emily, we're going to be back for another episode in a week or two's time. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you so much.
It's been a lot of fun.
Absolute pleasure.
Fantastic to have you on board. Emily, I'll catch you again soon.
See you later.
All right. Bye, everybody.
And because I don't know anything about slimy rocks.
Again.
Appalling.
It really is.
I had to get someone who actually does know this stuff because it would feel disingenuous.
Slimy rocks.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, that's
having your entire research career summed up.
I'll take it. I've done worse.